In this episode of our Duct Tape Garage drag car build, we only have a few short weeks to get the 327 engine ready for our Pontiac Firebird Trans Am for No Name Nationals.
We are going to the AHRA No Name Nationals.
The engine block is prepped, and we're waiting on parts to arrive, so let's dive into the cylinder heads and get started by checking for warpage.
All right, we've got our straight edge. We've got our feeler gauge. We're gonna try the 0.001 to start with, and then we'll work our way up. So I'm gonna put this across the cylinders. It'll almost go under this one part, but it won't. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna shove some rags under each cylinder to keep the valve from moving. Make it easier to pop these retainers out. There we go. That one doesn't look as bad. They smell like old oil. All right, well, there's how I'm taking these apart. All right, so there's the first couple cylinders done. I'm gonna continue to pull these apart, and then we'll be back. Look at what I found, if I found anything weird or not. Everything's pulled out of this head. I took a look at all of these valves, and they look pretty good. I'm gonna mic them just to see if there's any wear. And I really like the looks of these ports. Everything feels really smooth. I don't know if it was cleaned up at one point in time. All the valve seats look good. I'm gonna do that dye penetration test just to make sure none of these are cracked. But so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing. There's the underside of the driver's side head. There's the bottom of the passenger side head. You can see the machining marks going up and down here. Now the head gasket I'm using says it needs to be very smooth. I don't know if that'll work or not. I'm planning on using copper coat spray. Hopefully it seals. But one thing I wanted to show you was, look at these valves. This is one bank, and just look at how clean they are compared to the others. Here's the other bank. All right, let's go ahead and take these over and clean them up so we can test them. And I'm also going to do number 1 and number 6 piston because I dropped them on the ground like an idiot. Okay, here's the first head. I've got my 4-post lift up in the air with an old banner using the back of it because I don't want brake clean getting all over here. We'll go ahead and clean these off, then we'll do that dye penetration test. Here's the second cylinder head. I'm gonna go get some gloves and maybe some PPE. I'm starting to learn my lesson to wear safety glasses when I work with this stuff because it never fails. If I'm cleaning something out with carbon choke cleaner, it gets in my eye. Spraying something with brake cleaner, it gets on my eye. My eyes are just magnets for rust and chemicals. So I'm starting to learn in my older age to protect them. Because when I was younger, I'd be under a car and just rust raining down and get it in your eyes. Never learned, but I'm starting to actually pick up on that one. Okay, that's ready to go. We have the penetrant, the developer, and then the dye penetrant cleaner. We're gonna start with the penetrant, and I'm gonna spray these while it's drying. I'll clean those pistons off, and then we'll do those next. Right, now that it's been 5 minutes, well, over 5 minutes, I'm gonna wipe these down, and then we'll spray the developer. Okay, these have been finished developing. So what we're looking for are dark spots, which indicate that's where more developer was. So you're gonna get some dark spots where the casting was rougher if I didn't get the penetrant wiped out. And you can see the specks of dark here from the casting. But we're looking for lines that would indicate a crack. I see something similar right here. So it could have been the way I wiped that penetrant. I could have wiped it at an angle or something. I'm telling myself that's what I want it to be, because a crack doesn't follow, whoops, I just wiped it. A crack doesn't follow an arc like that. Now a crack could do that, arc. But I don't think this bottom one would be a crack. But that right there could be. So I'm gonna clean this all off and then retest it, at least that one spot. But I think everything else looks pretty darn good. I'm happy with that. All right, here we go again. Penetrant. We'll spray, let it sit for 5 minutes. All right, crisis averted. It's been 20 minutes. I can stop looking at eBay and Marketplace for heads anyway. It must have been application error. Let's look at this. So here it is now. And up is where those marks were before. And this one down here, it's very, very faint. So this was me wiping the penetrant. I must have went like this and stopped, because those lines line up perfectly with my fingers. And I also sprayed it on the side to see and even these little cuts. They're not showing up either, which I thought maybe they would because of how deep they are. Well, I'm happy with that. I'm gonna go get the kit with springs and retainers and all kinds of stuff. I'm gonna clean the valves up, start putting these heads together. All right, it's after dark. No one's looking. This is what I'm doing. Don't tell anybody, but I'm sanding on this head to try to get a better finish on this surface so my head gasket will seal. The head gasket I was going to use says it needs a very smooth surface, and after a bunch of sanding I can still see the machining marks. So here's my method to my madness. Right, so I've got this piece of square tubing, and before you say that I'm an idiot, I actually took my machinist straight edge and laid across here to make sure I found the straightest portion that I could, and I hit it with a disc to take all the rust and stuff off. So this is what I've been using, and I started out with 150 grit. I actually lowered myself down to 80 grit, and then I'll go back up to 150. But I'm just wrapping my tubing, and I'm spraying liberally with some lubricant. And I am making smooth, even passes. And then we're gonna check it. Clean this off really well. And I give this a wipe down. Right here's where I could fit the feeler gauge before. And pretty good. It's time to put a cylinder head together. I gave up on sanding the head. The next morning, I called a different machine shop. They said, we'll get it in this week. We have the proper equipment. We'll make it nice and smooth for you. So they did an awesome job. This head is true and smooth. So I went ahead, lapped all the valves. I'm going to start assembling this head. I'm going to put the valves in, then I'm going to measure my spring height, set up all of my shims, and then start putting the springs in. I already have one head done that's over here, and I did the old school method where you put water or something on top of your valves and blow air in to see if they leak. I had some issues with that one. I figured out that if I lap the valve or turn it just a little bit like I'm lapping the valve dry, it'll kind of crush up the little bits of dirt or whatever was in there and made them all seal really well. So I'm gonna get to it and I'll show you how I set this spring height. And I just want to remind you that I'm not a mechanic. This is the second head I've ever done this on. So this is for your entertainment purposes. This isn't a how-to. Do what I do at your own risk. I don't know if this is gonna work when I'm done. So I have these valves already in line. I'll pop them in, turn it around, start measuring it up. All right, I got this spring gauge on Amazon. It was $13, and boy, is it accurate. The only thing that I had to make sure was the gauge reads in thousandths. Now I broke it. Where is it? I did drop it. I must have broke it. Cause that, where is my... I broke it. Where's the inside part? I was reading. Yeah, that's not right. No, I shouldn't have dropped it. There it is. It's crooked. All right, so this part with the number scale broke off because I dropped it. So I just used some Permatex to stick it back on. All right, it's the next morning. My spring height gauge has had some time to sit and it feels like it's gonna work. So as I was saying, this gauge is pretty good for $13. Then I dropped it and broke it. But I just want to show you, you've got your gradations here. So where I was setting this at on the other head was 845. Should be right like that. And when I subtract the depth in here, that gave me my 1.71. I'm gonna go ahead and measure this, use my calipers, make sure it's still set correctly. All right, so what I figured is that I need this to read 1.845 or 1.84 for it to actually measure 1.845. So I'm gonna mock my springs up, put them all in, measure them with this, write down my measurements, then I'll do the subtraction to see which shims go where. I'll put the shims in, re-measure, make sure those are measuring good, and I can start putting my springs in. Okay, I'll start with this one. Make sure this is seated all the way. Put my keeper on. Then I hold back on it while I rotate this outwards. Then I'm just gonna write down what this is. 877. Do the next one. All right, so I took my measurements with my spring height gauge. I subtracted what I should be reading on the gauge for it to be 1.71 inches. And then I ended up with how much shim I need. I'm gonna start with my valve seals, and I'll just keep these in order. Move them off to the side. Here are my seals. And before I put my seals on, I like to put a little bit of this engine assembly lube on. Okay, now that we have those, I can start putting these shims in place. And before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm gonna go back with this and just double check my measurements. I almost jumped ahead, but it's better to check this twice. Once it's on, I'm not gonna wanna take it off. Some of these are a little over, some of these are a little under. The furthest one so far is 13 thousandths. So I'm gonna need to put a 15 thousandths shim in that one. So it's a good thing I decided to double check. Is it better to be under or over? I assume it would be better to be over if you're a decent amount. You're gonna have less spring pressure, but you're not gonna coil bind. All right, that's the last one. There's only one that I need to adjust, in my opinion, and that is one that is 13 thousandths. And I don't have the correct shims. So I'm gonna have to figure out which ones I can adjust and maybe go up an extra 5. Like this one, it's 835 instead of 840. So I could take 2 shims, which would be 30 thousandths, and I could put a 35 thousandths on that one. And then I could take that 15 thousandths and add it there. So let's see if I'm correct. Boy, these are slippery with all the oil on them, and I have a big cut on my hand that probably should have had stitches because it's still opening up. So that's why I've been wearing gloves. Let's see, that one is now, what? Now it's 15 off. What did I do? Did I put 2 in it? Now it's 825. Huh, that's weird. What did I do? There's only one there. What the heck? Measure again. Measure twice, shim once. All right, that's better. That's right on. Well, close to it. 30, 36. Some 4 thousandths off. That one's fine. And then the one that I changed around on the other side, check it. That one's good too. Okay, let's start putting some springs in. All right, I have the valve started. I have the spring on. I have the retainer started. All right, I give up. I'm gonna lay it down. Board. Set it on these valves so they don't fall out. There we go. when I put these retainers in, because this spring compressor, these aren't aligned quite right, so it will move the spring. So I like to put these with the seam facing this direction. I realized that when I did it the other way, one retainer would go in and the other wouldn't, because the pressure that it's putting on the spring. Let's turn it over and see how they test. So I created this test plate with a gasket and valve stem. When I tried to apply vacuum, it doesn't seal very well. So I ended up just doing the bubble test. I hooked up my blowgun to the plate so I can just hold the plate over my port, put air to it, see if the valve leaks any bubbles. So I have some diesel fuel that I used to clean these off earlier. I'm gonna use some diesel fuel in these valves and test them. And you don't need very much, just enough to cover the seat, but I always end up pouring way too much. So I'll just take that spring off and I'm going to rotate that without anything in it, no compound or anything, just to see if maybe there's some dirt or something that needs crushed up and out. Okay, turn this back over. Come off of it. There we go. Sounds a little bit crunchy. Put the spring back on and try again.
So the cylinder heads are checked, cleaned, and assembled. They're ready to bolt on to the 327 to see if they'll actually work. But the rest of the engine, that's where things really start to go wrong. Next time, we'll tackle the cam, crank, pistons, and an expensive mistake I wish hadn't happened. Hit subscribe if you want to see what happens next, and if we can actually make it on race day. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.